The showdown between Anthropic and the Trump administration appears to be going nuclear. And we spoke about this on a previous show. The Pentagon currently has a $200 million contract to use Claude in its operations. But there's been a standoff for the past couple of weeks as the Department of Defense wants unrestricted use of the AI model, whereas Anthropic wants to limit its use. So in particular, not allowing Claude to be used to surveil Americans or to be used in a weapons system without human control. So that much has been known for a couple of weeks. What's new? Well, according to Axios, Trump's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has set a deadline for Anthropic to agree to unlimited use of its product. And they report that Hegseth and Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei had a tense meeting on Tuesday, where Amodei was told that the Pentagon will either cut ties and declare Anthropic a supply chain risk or invoke the Defense Production Act to force the company to tailor its model to the military's needs. So basically commandeering a private company because they won't agree to let the US government do whatever they want with the technology. So this is from that article in Axios. The Defense Production Act gives the president the authority to compel private companies to accept and prioritize particular contracts as required for national defense. The law is rarely used in such a blatantly adversarial way. The idea, the senior defense official said, would be to force Anthropic to adapt its model to the Pentagon's needs without any safeguards. The Pentagon is also considering severing its contract with Anthropic and declaring the company a supply chain risk, which would require a plethora of other companies that work with the Pentagon to certify that Claude isn't used in their workflows. Now, given the amount of companies in America that work with the Pentagon, that could be a big blow for Anthropic. They also report that Amodei is holding firm and has said Anthropic is willing to adapt its usage policies for the Pentagon, but not to allow its model to be used for the mass surveillance of Americans or the development of weapons that fire without human involvement. This dramatic standoff between the world's leading AI companies and the world's leading military has prompted pretty strong reactions. Some are viewing Amodei as a hero standing up to the deep state. Left-wing historian Rutger Bregman said this is the most important thing happening in the world right now. The administration wants killer drones plus mass surveillance of Americans. Anthropic refuses to build it. While most tech companies fall in line, they are prepared to pay the price for their principles. Mehdi Hasan was also impressed. He said, good for him, a rare tech guy doing the right thing, it seems. Thank you. In a recent interview in a New York Times podcast, Dario Amodei explained why surveillance of Americans and fully autonomous weapons were a red line for his company.
That's one reason why I'm worried about the autonomous drone swarm, right? So, the constitutional protections in our military structures depend on the idea that there are humans who would, we hope, disobey illegal orders. With fully autonomous weapons, we don't necessarily have those protections. But I actually think this whole idea of constitutional rights and liberty along many different dimensions, can be undermined by AI if we don't update these protections appropriately. So, think about the Fourth Amendment. It is not illegal to, put cameras around everywhere in public space and, record every conversation. It's a public space. You don't have a right to privacy in a public space. But today, the government couldn't record that all and make sense of it. Right. With AI, the ability to transcribe speech, to look through it, correlate it all, you could say, oh, there's this, this person is a member of the opposition. This person is expressing this view, and make a map of all 100 million. And so, are you going to make a mockery of the Fourth Amendment by the technology finding kind of technical ways around it?
So Dario Amodei, I'm very suspicious of the guy, but he's always had this argument, which is to say he thinks that advanced AI could be incredibly dangerous. He doesn't rule out it killing everyone, right? He thinks that this is a very dangerous technology as well as a technology that can bring great wealth and health and the like. And he's always said that sort of in theory he'd prefer this to be slowed down so we could avoid some of the negative consequences. But because this is now a race and there is no sort of overriding regulation which could stop or force various companies to slow down, be they in America or China, then the only way to remain relevant in this race is to be the best. And we should all be thankful that Claude is the best at the moment. and it's run by a moral person. Now, I've always found that quite unconvincing because of, they're also getting very rich out of this, getting very powerful, and I just think the idea that we're all in this race together, so we have no choice but to go as fast as possible. To me, it seems irresponsible. However, I suppose many people are looking at this, Ash, and saying, well, thank God that it's Dario Amodei who has the best model at the moment, not Elon Musk, because that means that there is some pushback to Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth trying to get permission to use this incredibly powerful technology for whatever outcome they want.
I can see that argument. Thing that I would probably do, though, is expand the scope a little bit broader than the US, because one arena in which AI has already been changing the nature of warfare dramatically. Sorry, my cat is really clingy at the moment and won't leave me alone. One area of warfare that's been transformed by AI is, of course, the genocide in Gaza. So there are two particularly relevant bits of AI which were really important in terms of target selection. One's called the Gospel and the other's called Lavender. And even if you just look at the ability of an AI to put together target lists much quicker and then hand it over to a human officer for sign-off, where that speed combines with what is effectively a political priority, which is to completely destroy the ability for life to be sustained in Gaza. What you had was, an absolutely enormous impact in terms of casualties that the Israeli army wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. There were other programs that were used. There was Lavender, which was used to locate relatively low-ranking members of Hamas and the PIJ. There were also sort of policies, effectively, which would say what's an acceptable number of civilian deaths per alleged member of Hamas, and ranging on seniority could be anywhere between 20 and 100 per actual target. So these are all ways in which warfare's already been transformed by the use of AI, and this is still within a context where there has to be a degree of human oversight and human sign-off. So what it is that Hegseth and Trump want from Anthropic is absolutely terrifying. In terms of how I feel about our own politicians about it, I've had the privilege or misfortune, whatever way you want to look at it, to talk to Labour ministers about AI, right? And so this is when I'm doing something like Politics Live or Question Time, chat in the green room. And they're absolute idiots. Like, they're complete numbskulls. Whenever you raise any of these kinds of questions about, okay, the use of AI in compiling lists of targets in war, or if you talk about the impact of AI in education, for instance, and you talk about what it's going to do or is doing to the critical and analytical abilities of children in education, they just sort of go, oh, we'll just teach them how to use the prompts better. And then anything which is more existential, they completely ignore. It's sad, and I also think it's fragile, as we're about to discuss, to rely on AI CEOs to have the best interests of the human species at heart when they're developing this technology. But let me tell you, our politicians are absolutely incapable of it. They literally don't understand what they're talking about.
Let's look, you just intimated towards it there. Another piece dropped about Anthropic in the past 24 hours, which paints the company in a less positive light than the standoff with Trump. So this is from Time magazine. So it says, exclusive, Anthropic drops flagship safety pledge. And this is from that report. In 2023, Anthropic committed to never train an AI system unless it could guarantee in advance that the company's safety measures were adequate. For years, its leaders touted that promise, the central pillar of their responsible scaling policy, as evidence that they are a responsible company that would withstand market incentives to rush to develop a potentially dangerous technology. But in recent months, the company decided to radically overhaul the RSP, so that's the responsible scaling policy. That decision included scrapping the promise to not release AI models if Anthropic can't guarantee proper risk mitigations in advance. We felt that it wouldn't actually help anyone for us to stop training AI models, Anthropic's chief science officer, Jared Kaplan, told Time in an exclusive interview. We didn't really feel with the rapid advance of AI that it made sense for us to make unilateral commitments if competitors are blazing ahead. The new version of the policy, which Time reviewed, includes commitments to be more transparent about the safety risks of AI, including making additional disclosures about how Anthropic's own models fare in safety testing. It commits to matching or surpassing the safety efforts of competitors, and it promises to delay Anthropic's AI development if leaders both consider Anthropic to be a leader of the AI race and think the risks of catastrophe to be significant. So actually got a company here. So they've said, we're weakening our policies, and now if we think that our product could have catastrophic consequences, we might delay it for a couple of weeks. It's sort of like, I think if your product is going to have catastrophic, if you think there's a high chance of it having catastrophic consequences, it's not just delay it a couple of weeks, don't release the goddamn sort of catastrophe machine.
I mean, I don't know if you watch Industry, Michael, but I was thinking about the speech given by this season's baddie called Whitney. So he's standing up in an AGM for a bank, and he says, tattooed on my heart is the motto of all industrialists everywhere. We want speed, we want efficiency, we want certainty. And that desire for speed is a product of market logics. Now, I'm not saying that state logics are always better. We just talked about what it is the Trump administration want Anthropic to do. But you can encode ideas of what is the good in state policy and pursue that as well as the profit motive. Whereas Anthropic is having to deal with competitors, both competitors which exist domestically, but also international competitors like DeepSeek. And there's also a fear that AI is a bubble or will become perceived as a bubble. And, we know that markets are a product of herd behavior, effectively. So what you want to be is the one which is too big and too essential to fail, right? You want to be the one which either gets the bailout because you're central to government operations, or you want to be the one that actually makes the product which is useful, and then the other ones can die. And those logics mean that all sorts of other concerns, privacy, safeguarding, and then also the sort of, I would say the cognitive attritional effects of AI dependency, all those things go out the window. Scary time to be alive. That's why Moose is heading out the door. He doesn't like this conversation anymore.
I wanted to ask you actually, because normally it just so happens that my AI days are often with Aaron, sometimes Helena. I'm not sure. I think because you're normally on a Monday, there's normally so much news over the weekend that we don't talk about these topics. I want to know your P-doom. What do you think is the probability that AI kills us all?
Well, I think that AI is part of the thing which is already killing us, which is the drive to convenience. I was talking about it to somebody today, which is I think that there are two things which are hard-coded in human behavior. One is the drive to sociality and the other is the drive to convenience. And at the moment, these two things are in tension and convenience appears to be winning. Whenever you make something more frictionless and less labor-intensive, we go for it, even if it's at the expense of our sociality. So what really worries me about AI is that, children in particular become more and more reliant on it for their thinking. So does, everyone that's in the labour market. And what you have is the world just becoming shittier and sloppier and worse and stupider. So that's the thing which really worries me. Maybe it's because I've not engaged with the sort of spectacular existential case enough. But I think it's going to be the sort of enshittification of the human race.